So on the podcast today, we have Mike Hammer, who is the owner of Lyme Regis Stays. Mike runs 8 properties in Lyme Regis and the surrounding areas, and is now beginning to manage properties on behalf of others, having successfully run his own in the area. So Mike, welcome to the podcast, and looking forward to hearing some of your tips for our listeners.
Yeah, fantastic.
So as always on the podcast, we start off with your funniest guest story.
Okay, well, I've had a few things happen. Probably one quite over the summer in one of our houses, which has an adjacent garden to it, and some lovely neighbours who live upstairs, a lovely old couple. And they woke up one morning, and the guests that were staying in my flat downstairs were in their garden, walking down the path with their plant pots, with the plants in. And taking them to their car. Yeah, that's probably one of the weirdest and funniest that's happened recently.
So they were just making off with the plants?
Yeah, they were just stealing the plants from my neighbour's garden.
And they thought they were going to get away with that?
Well, who knows? Who knows? Funny things happen.
Yeah. Can I ask how you dealt with it? What did you? I mean, how do you even?
Well, I wasn't at the house, but my neighbour dealt with it. He popped out and explained to the lady that they were in fact his plants, and could she pop them back, please? And I think she was just very embarrassed.
Very good. Well, mistakes happen, I suppose. Very good. So just a little bit of a background on yourself and your listings and how you got into the industry.
So I've worked in the live music industry for the last 25 years. I ran Coco in Camden for 11 and a half years. Also ran the London Palladium for Andrew Lloyd Webber. Got put on furlough just before lockdown. Really enjoyed being on furlough, and also met my now wife. And I had two properties at the time, which I'd been Airbnb out for about 6 or 7 years. And we decided to buy another couple of properties and do them up over lockdown. And it's kind of grown from that really to basically being my full-time job.
Fantastic. And you're not doing anything else now. You're just purely focused on the business because it's grown to an extent where the revenue's kind of, I guess, past or is sufficient to kind of keep you full time.
Yeah, I'm VAT registered now, so it must be doing okay. But I still freelance at music festivals. So I work at Glastonbury and Download, Wilderness, and a few other festivals in management roles. But that's kind of to keep the sparkle in my life.
Yeah, cool.
The rock and roll sparkle.
Yeah, that's that. So you do that for the fun, and then sort of the bread and butter is the hosting, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely a full-time job now.
So when did you get to the point where you realised that this was going to be, the full-time? You could go into hosting full-time rather than sort of having to rely on your day job and do it as a sort of side hustle, I guess.
Well, I'm 53 now, and I'd always decided that at 55 I was going to come out of the music industry, and worked out that if I had 3 properties, that would bring in enough money to kind of keep me out of trouble and not have to work full time if I was down in Lyme Regis. So that it I locked down, and that because they do so well. We've just carried on expanding. Luckily we had some money from inheritance money that we used to buy the 2 most recent properties, and we got them for great deals. They needed complete refurbing. One cost 70,000 to refurb, which I did a lot of the work myself, and the other one was about 50,000 to refurb. But we've more than made that money back in the kind of value of those properties now as well. Mm-hmm. I realised I'd kind of known for a long time that having properties, renting out them short term, the Airbnb, and selling them through our own website was kind of pretty profitable. And we run at about we're at 87% occupancy all year round at the moment. So there's very rarely down times. November a little bit of December and January. That's about it. The rest of the time, it's just flat out.
Yeah, and that leads us on nicely to sort of what a normal hosting day looks like for you when you're managing your property.
Well, I would say, because I've been in the service industry for a long time, I'm kind of on it like a rocket. So the last thing I do at night is check my phone. The first thing I do in the morning is check my phone. I'm available, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for kind of guest questions. But I've got to the point where it's very, very rarely I get a guest question. After 8 years of answering things, we give all our guests so much information in advance that they don't need to, don't really need to get in contact. But, as soon as someone's checked in, we send a couple of hours later an email saying, welcome, hope you arrived safely and all settled in. And so it's not like I sit down for some work. It's kind of like ongoing through the day. And then I'll have little projects. I'll put aside a day to update the manuals, the health and safety, update risk assessments, all that sort of thing. And then I'm probably down in the cottages for about a week, a month, doing maintenance outside of silly season, which is obviously kind of pretty much June through till end of September, where it's harder to get down there because they're so busy. So any work that needs doing, will be done between changeovers, or I've got a really good team of people who can do jobs down there for me.
I was going to say, how much of that do you sort of outsource? I mean, the cleaning and the maintenance.
I
guess there's a bit of a trade-off in terms of making a bit of margin, and then obviously sort of outsourcing and not spending too much of your time, doing it. So how do you find that balance?
Cleaning wise, I have an amazing lady called Wendy who's cleaned for me for 8 years, and our cleaning reviews are just 5 stars across the board pretty much. So she's the most important person. She's the most important person that I work with. So she has a little team of people, and we work very well together. And I look after her, and she gets paid very well as well. Because if I didn't have Wendy, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. And then I have a retired chap friend called Graham who will come down with me and do maintenance work. So he'll do the stuff that I can't do. So he can fit a new toilet and sort out a washing machine, and I can't. I'm great with a paintbrush. And then I have a plumber, electrician, a builder, and a roofer who I can get down to properties within 24 hours or less. I have a local chap friend of mine called Kev who picks up the rubbish once a week. It's just it's kind of building relationships with people down there, because so you buy people a pint and they'll look after you. So got a good team down there, and it means that I don't have to be down there all the time, especially if I'm away working at music festivals.
Yeah, of course. I guess that kind of works in more rural listings where you've got a bit of a community around the area that you're operating, right? So you can sort of pull in people, you can find people locally who would be happy to do sort of odd jobs. Maybe even you could probably even find sort of cleaning staff who are in the area, like you say, like a handyman who's sort of retired, who can do the things that you can't do. I think that's really valuable tip, and I think that brings us on nicely to sort of your top 3 tips for Airbnb hosts. So, I mean, of everything that you sort of do to make the business work, what would you say your top 3 tips for people who are looking to be Airbnb hosts?
Top 3 tips. Firstly, the most important person that works for you is your cleaner, by far. If I didn't have Wendy and her little team, I would be screwed. So your cleaner is the most important person. You have to keep them on your side, and give them a lot of praise, great communication, buy them Christmas and birthday presents, and look after them. Because if you didn't have your cleaner, you're going to struggle. And if they don't want to work for you as well, because there's an awful lot of other places they could go and clean rather than your houses. So they are the most important person. Secondly, I'd say is definitely communication. So my aim to get back to any query is 60 seconds.
Wow.
And I think I probably achieved that most of the time, unless I'm asleep. I think people really appreciate that communication and being able to talk to someone or ask a question and you going straight back to them. And then the third thing is the information that you give to your customers. So, I'm lucky that we've got 8 years worth of questions. So it got to the point about a year ago where someone asked me, I said, well, when they stayed, always say, I hope you had a great time. Please give us any feedback. And they said, well, absolutely loved it, but you didn't have a lemon squeezer. So I just ordered 5, 6 lemon squeezers on Amazon, which arrived the next day, and Wendy popped them in the houses. And that's the last time anyone's asked me for something. I think we've got the houses so set up that everything's there for it to be a home from home, including, and one of the most important things, sharp knives. I have 70-pound cutting Japanese knives for the guests.
Wow.
And everyone comments on the sharp knives. And every time I stay in a holiday let or an Airbnb, the knives are never sharp and it winds me up.
It's self-catering, right? So, you've got to have something, you've got to have the right tools.
You do. And, a lot more people would rather go self-catering than stay in a hotel now. And what we've noticed just over the last kind of 6 months with the cost of living crisis is I'm now having to get the bins emptied twice a week rather than once a week. So people are staying and eating in rather than eating out. So I think they'd still want to go out and have a fantastic stay away, but they'll eat at home rather than going out and staying and going out to restaurants.
This is onto quite an interesting subject, actually, because you mentioned the cost of living crisis, and obviously I think there's a bit of debate in the industry as to whether that's going to impact bookings. But I think there's a lot of people kind of calling for a bit of a downturn in bookings. But you mentioned that people are electing to stay in self-catered to save money. If you're going to, for example, a hotel, you're going to end up spending probably a lot more. You're going to eat out a lot more, obviously. So actually, people could be doing more staycations and sort of eating in their accommodation rather than going and splashing it all on a hotel and eating out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is, we know that's happening.
Very good. And so it's very, you mentioned you get a lot of, you had a lot of questions. You basically answer those now sort of in advance. Are there any tools or anything that you use to make your life easier, but also help in that process?
Probably one of the best tools on Airbnb is the quick replies. And that saves me hours. So everything from sending the guests the welcome email to someone asking about the parking, literally I can click one button, send a reply, which has already got their name in it, signed from me, shows the dates that they're staying, and just saves so much time and is brilliantly set up. And kind of linked in with that is also that you can you can set a time for any message to go out to guests. So whether that be, the day after the stay, the day that they're leaving, to give them a bit of advice on where to put the key and please empty the dishwasher, etc. That works really well. I think Airbnb has set it up so well. Have set that up so well, and it saves me hours of work.
Interesting.
To take a booking and deal with the booking can take me under a minute sometimes. The whole process.
Fantastic.
That's how quick it can be.
Easy. And do you only operate through Airbnb at the moment, or are you across the other platforms?
So we're probably 75% Airbnb, 5% Plum Guide, which we've only been on for about a year, but not getting a huge amount of bookings from Plum Guide, but I've had a few. And the other 20% is direct bookings that come through our website and our Instagram.
Fantastic.
And then, a huge amount of repeat guests. We've got one lady that's been staying in one of our cottages. It's just a one bed. It's beautiful, a one bed cottage right on the river. And she's writing a book. and I think she's stayed 6 times so far this year. So it's lovely to have guests like that just come back and back and back. You know, we've had guests coming back for 8 years.
That's sort of her inspiration. That's where she goes to be inspired.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's a lovely neck of the woods, Lyme Regis. It's got so much going for it. You know, with the restaurant scene, you got the Jurassic Coast and fossils, and it's just, you know, and everything's, once you get to Lyme Regis, park your car. You don't need your car again. Everywhere's within a walking distance, so it's perfect.
Sounds lovely, yeah. And I was going to say, actually, so in terms of your direct bookings, you get all of those via the website. That's something that you built yourself, right? Is that something that you guys have built in house?
Yeah.
And are you guys doing anything to sort of increase those bookings and try and get away from the platforms, or are you quite happy to sort of sit on Airbnb at the moment and absorb the booking fee?
That's an interesting question. That's a very interesting question. You know, Airbnb charge me 3%. They charge the customer 18 or 19%. But it works so well for me, it's hard to pull away. Obviously, I'd like more direct bookings, but you get a lot of support from Airbnb. You know, there's the host cover and insurance, etc. You know that the guests that you're staying are nice guests. You know, you can only do an instant book if you've had, you know, 5-star reviews. You know, so if someone's getting in contact with me and they've only got a 1-star review, it's very unlikely that I'd let them stay in one of my cottages. So when I first started up, I was using booking.com, and I had some customers stay that I would very much not want to stay again. You know, people that nick plant pots. You don't know who you're getting, whereas at least, you know, I do know who I'm getting with Airbnb, which really helps. But we are looking at other options. We've been looking at Super Control, which is you know, which would embed onto my website and then link with Airbnb and Plum Guide, etc. But I've had a few issues with that so far, so it's on hold.
It's the technical side, I suppose, right?
Technical side, yeah. Wiping all my prices for a year. That's the first thing they did. But anyway, I don't want to be negative.
Fair enough. And like, so you mentioned there, so I get those. That's sort of a channel manager for hosts.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any others that you analysed in that process when you were looking for a channel manager, or were these the guys that sort of stood out to you?
Yeah, they stood out. But I probably should have looked at some others. We were recommended it, by a couple of people, and because we're looking at growing the business as well and managing other people's properties, now we're going to have that in place. But you know, what I've learned is that never try and do that just before Christmas, because it doesn't always work. And you know, we take probably 20% between now and the next 2 weeks. I'll take 20% bookings for the whole year.
Wow.
It's the busiest time of the year for taking bookings. So changing to a new platform is not a good idea.
You're busy, I guess, right? So, and yeah. Is that bookings for going into next year or over this Christmas period?
Over the next year, across the board, yeah. So
I think for next year.
Yeah, so July and August we're probably at about 30% full, and I should imagine by the kind of first week of Jan, we should be about 50%, maybe more, in all the houses for July and August. And then a lot of bookings come in for January and February between, you know, Christmas. People just want to get away. They've had relatives at home all over Christmas, and they just want to get away from them or their children.
So that sounds like me, yeah. I might come down. Yeah, so we mentioned earlier the state of the UK market and the potential impact on that. Do you think that the cost of living crisis could potentially have a positive impact or a negative impact? And what are you seeing in your local market right now?
Definitely no negative. I think we're as busy as we've ever been, but I think that's very much down to Lyme Regis being such a popular tourist destination. somewhere that's still, it's still only 2.5, 3 hours from London by train or car. It's not like Cornwall where you've got a 6-hour drive from London, or, so we have a huge amount of customers coming from London, southwest, so Cheltenham, Bristol, Wales. That's where the majority of customers come from, and I think people are still definitely want to go away. And as I said, I think it's more they'll cut back on other things. So it's more cutting back on going out to restaurants, eating at home. But we're definitely as busy as we've ever been. Fantastic. But as I said, I think that's very much down to location.
Yeah. And going off that then, so I mean, if you guys are obviously busy and not seeing any downturn, do you think that it's still a good time to invest, or would you suggest that maybe it's just because of where you guys are that you're not being impacted?
We'd love to buy more houses but in the last 3 years, properties have gone up by a huge amount, 20+%, and we couldn't afford to get into the market again right now with new properties. That's why we're going to start managing for other people. Properties that are still, they haven't really dropped. A lot of the coastal areas. There's so many people now that work from home and would rather move out of cities and live near the coast. We're not seeing property prices drop. So, if you've got some inheritance and you manage to somehow get a buy-to-let mortgage, which are very hard to get at the moment and extremely expensive, I still think it's a good time to buy. I think a lot of people are selling their second homes and holiday lets at the moment. And we've seen that in Lyme Regis. There's more and more going on the market. And whereas before, they'd sell within hours, now they're staying on the market for 4 or 5 weeks, but then they're still selling for original prices. So whether it's a good time to go in, depends if you got left some money or not.
So basically, if you've got an inheritance.
yeah, it's risky, and you have to know your locale, and it is location completely.
Very good. On that basis, where's the sort of best area within Lyme Regis, would you say, for anybody looking to invest in the area?
All of our properties are along the side of the river, and 3 minutes walk to the beach and 3 minutes walk to the car park, because there's no parking, because it's the old town, and they're all old fishermen's cottages. One was a stable, and it's that location. People don't have to walk anywhere, so that's the perfect place to be. I wouldn't have any other houses that weren't more than kind of 40 or 50 meters from where my current houses are.
So that's all in the old town, right?
Yeah,
and all walkable. Fantastic. Well, Mike, it's been really insightful. We've got some really good stuff. What we do like to do is just wrap up with the second funniest guest story. So if you do have one, it'd be great to share.
Yeah, well, it's just a toilet story, and it's not really that funny, but I had some kind of plumbing went wrong in Lynchview Cottage, which is a little, it's an old fisherman's cottage right on the side of the river. And I don't understand plumbing, but I had a guest call me up, and she said, "You need to listen to this," and went into the bathroom and pulled the chain, and it literally sounded like Concorde taking off. And then it went on and on and on for about 4 minutes as the water was filling up in the toilet. So and she was she couldn't stop laughing, which was the great thing. But anyway, got a plumber around there and got it sorted out. But I've never heard a toilet make a noise like it.
Hopefully it wasn't anything that was added to it by the guests, let's say.
Let's hope.
Anyway, brilliant. Yeah, we've got some good stuff there, hopefully, for our host listeners. So once again, thanks for your time, Mike, and we'll see you again.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.